Welcome back with another video on this channel. I am Zahin Azir and we are doing Advent of Cyber 2024. So this is task 15. We're gonna look at GRC day 9, 9 o'clock. Make GRC font tell no one. The story. So there is already a walkthrough for this. We're gonna create our own. So MaxKitty and Glitch want to hire a e-discovery company to process some forensic data for their investigation. They have invited bids from third parties for this purpose. These companies have bid for the project. MaxKitty and Glitch now need to do a risk assessment on all three of these companies to identify the one with the least amount of risk so that they can move forward. All these companies were required to fill out a questionnaire based on which a risk assessment will be done. Okay, sure. Introduction to GRC, governance risk and compliance, plays a crucial role in any organization to ensure that their security practices, along with their personal, regulatory, and legal obligations. Although in general, good security practices help protect a business from suffering a breach depending on the sector in which an organization operates. There may be external security regulations that it needs to adhere to. So this is GRC. There is a company and then we have GRC, and then they are showing some kind of log here to depict their implementing security. And they are also mentioning that all of this GRC is creating some kind of firewall on each other. Okay, so I'm going to parameter firewall. Let's take a look at some examples in the financial sector. Reserve Bank regulation, SWIFT CSP data protection. Okay, Reserve Bank regulation. In most countries, banks have to adhere to security regulations set forward or forth by the country's Reserve Bank. This ensures that each bank adhere to a minimum security level to protect the funds and information of their customers. SWIFT CSP. This is a cloud service provider now. This should be something else. Bank uses the SWIFT network to communicate with each other and sends funds after a massive bank breach resulted in 81 million fraudulent SWIFT transfer. The SWIFT created the customer security program. So this is CSP, customer security program, not the cloud service provider. Okay, which sets the standard of security for banks to connect to the SWIFT network. There are some other regulations as well, for example PCI DSS. So if you are handling any kind of customer data, so you need to adhere to PCI DSS 2.0 or maybe more version of the standard. And there is also other standards that usually people adopt, which is 27001 ISO standard, or if they need to comply, if they are bank, they need to comply with the PCI DSS. Okay, so we have SWIFT CSP, and now we know that BRISC, which are 5 countries, are trying to create their own network to process the bank transactions. Okay, so there are maybe 2 at the same time, but right now everybody is going to this SWIFT network. Data protection. As banks hold sensitive information about their customers, they have to adhere to the security standards created by their data regulator. Usually the Reserve Bank is in most countries. Okay, so for data protection, as I told you before, that the PCI DSS standard is the way to go for the banks, or maybe for the customers as well, who receives or stores customer data. Okay, so customer data could include the credit card information, first name, last name, when the card is expiring, and all of the things as well. When you run a large organization with multiple different teams, how do you stay on top of all these regulations and ensure that good security is applied by all teams? This is where GRC comes in. They play a crucial role in understanding external security standards, translating them into internal standards, and then ensuring that they are applied by all teams to help reduce the organization's risk to an acceptable level. Let's take a quick look at these functions of GRC. We have governance. So GRC stands for governance, compliance and regulations, risk and compliance. Governance, risk and compliance. Governance is the function that creates the framework that an organization uses to make decisions regarding information security. Governance is the creation of an organization's security strategy, policies, standards, and practices in alignment with the organization's overall goal. Governance also defines the roles and responsibilities that everyone in the organization has to play to help ensure these security standards are met. Risk is the function that helps to identify, assess or quantify and mitigate risk to organization's IT assets or digital assets, even physical assets as well. Risk helps the organization understand potential threats and vulnerabilities and impact that they could have if a threat actor were to execute or exploit them. By simply turning on a computer, an organization has some level of risk of a cyber attack. The risk function is important to help reduce the overall risk to an acceptable level and develop contingency plan in the event of cyber attack where a risk is realized. Okay, compliance is a function that ensures that the organization adheres to all external legal, regulatory, even internal regulatory and industry standards. For example, adhering to the GDPR law or aligning the organization's security to an industry standard such as NIST. So current standard that people are using is NIST 1.1, I think, but now they have NIST 2.0 as well. ISO 27001 is pretty standard industry standard that everybody is trying to adhere to. Okay. Introduction to risk assessment. Before MaxKitty and Glitch chooses an e-discovery company to handle their forensic data, they need to figure out which one is for safest choice. This is where a risk assessment comes in. It's a process to identify potential problems before they happen. Think of it as checking the weather before going on a hike. If there is a storm coming, we would want to know ahead of time so you can either pre-plan or change your plans. Prepare or change your plans. Why are risk assessments done? Risk assessments are like a reality check for businesses. They connect cybersecurity to the bigger picture, which minimizes the business risk. In other words, it's not just about securing data, but about protecting the business as a whole. Imagine you run an online store that collects customer information like names, addresses, and credit card details. If the data get stolen because of a weak security system, it's not just the data that's at risk. Your reputation, customer trust, and even your profits are on the line. That is very correct. A risk assessment could have helped you identify that weak point and fix it before anything went wrong. For MaxKitty and Glitch, assessing the risks of each e-discovery company helps them decide which one is less likely to have a data breach or other issues that could disrupt the investigation. Okay, performing a risk assessment. Every business main goal is to generate revenues and profits. For most businesses, cybersecurity does not directly contribute to revenue generation. That is very true. Or profit maximization. Yeah. So if you adhere to cybersecurity policies, that means you need to have some kind of department and they need to have some kind of tools in order to implement the policies, and all of this require a financial commitment. Okay, and since these are not directly contributing to the revenue but basically saving you this is a insurance policy. This is saving you from potential risks or threats that your business may face. Okay, so instead of saving money and not implementing cybersecurity, in the long run, it is more financially beneficial if you implement the cybersecurity. So this is how the risk assessment will help the business owners to basically decide which features or what kind of cybersecurity policies that they need to implement and how much finance or financial commitment they want to do. Businesses decide to spend part of their hard-earned revenues on cybersecurity to avoid the risk of revenue or reputation loss resulting from a cyber threat. That is very true. Businesses often take these steps to achieve this goal. We will now work along the process of completing a risk register. A risk register tracks the progress of risk mitigation and all open risk. An example of such a risk register is shown in the animation below. Let's take a look at the steps required to add the risk to the risk register. So we have risk number, name, description, and likelihood of risk realization, impact of the realization, risk score, and risk owner. So we have unpatched web server. The web server has been patched in months. Last date was this one. Likelihood is occasional, impact realization is high, and the risk score is 12. So the risk owner is max credit. It is risk owner means that who will work on this particular risk to take further actions. Okay. Identification of risks. To assess risk, we must first identify the factors that can cause revenue or reputation loss resulting from these cyber threats. This exercise requires carefully assessing the attack surface of the organization and identifying areas which might be used to harm the organization. Examples of identified risks can be an unpatched web server, a high privileged user account without proper security controls, a third-party vendor who might be infected by a malware connecting to the organization's network. That is very true. A system for which support has ended by the vendor and it is still in production. This is also, all of them are really valid use cases. An organization might identify several other risks in addition to these. Example, however, in addition to just identifying risk, the risks also need to be quantified. Okay, we need to assign some kind of number in order to see which have high priority and which particular item have more likelihood to occur. So depending on the risk score, we will take our decisions. Okay. After all, the likelihood of materializing a risk on a condoned off or isolated server differ greatly from that of a public-facing server hosting a web front end. That is very true. If one server is isolated, is well protected, then the risk mitigation on that server may have less priority or low priority than if you compare same with a public-facing server. Okay, public-facing server that people from outside can access this server, or the website that are posted on the server can be accessed outside. So this particular web server will have higher chances or probability to be to get attacked. Okay, so our priority from low will be changed to high in case of the web front end. Okay, similarly, the impact of a risk materialized on a ground jewel such as main database server containing confidential information differs greatly from a data of a development server with dummy data. That is very true. Assigning the likelihood to each risk. To quantify risk, we need to identify how likely or probable it is that the risk will materialize. We can then assign a number to quantify this likelihood. This number is often on a scale of 1 to 5. The exact scale differs from the organization to organization. And from framework to framework, likelihood can also be called the probability of materialization of a risk. An example scale for likelihood can be improbable, so unlikely that it might never happen; remote, very unlikely to happen, but still there is a possibility; occasional, likely to happen once or sometime; probable, likely to happen several times; frequent, likely to happen often and regularly. It might be noticed that while we are trying to quantify the risk, we still don't define exact quantities of what constitutes several times and what constitutes regularly. The reason is that the likelihood for a server which has a very high uptime requirement will be different from a server that is usually infrequent. That is used infrequent. Therefore, the likelihood scale will differ from case to case and from asset to asset. On the flip side, we can see that this scale provides us with a very usable scale of differentiating between different probabilities of occurrence of a certain event. That is very true. I mean, depending on the use case, you can either decrease the likelihood of risk happening or risk materialization, or you can increase it as per the use case. Okay. Assigning impact to each risk. Once we have identified the risks and likelihood of a risk, the next step is to quantify the impact this risk's materialization might have on the organization. For example, if there is a public facing web server that is unpatched and get breached, what will be the impact on the organization? Different organizations calculate impact in different ways. Some organizations might use the CVSS scoring. So CVSS have two versions, I think 3.0 and 4.0. So most of the time people are using 3.0 versions. Version of the CVSS. Now people are moving away from 3 to move towards this CVSS4 because CVSS4 is more comprehensive than the CVSS. Okay, scoring to calculate the impact of a risk. Other might use their own rating derived from the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of a certain asset. Yeah, depending on the history of the organization, they can drive their own rating as well. So most of the time, if you need to publish some information on the internet, maybe in the Rapid7 database or ExploitDB database, so you need to create some kind of CVSS score in order to communicate that what is this severity of this particular vulnerability. Other might base it on a severity categorization of the incidents. Similar to likelihood, we also quantify impact often on a scale of 1 to 5. An example scale of impact can be based on the following definitions. Informational, very low impact, almost non-existent. For example, some vulnerability can give the version number of the software that we are running on the server. So this could be informational. Okay, low impacting a limited part of one area of the organization's operation with little to no revenue loss. So for example, if there is any server or software version which publicly have exploit available, so in this case, if the version number is exposed, that means it could be from low to medium or maybe high, depending on the server version that are running on your system. Okay, medium impacting one part of the organization's operations completely with major revenue loss. High impacting several parts of the organization's operations, causing significant revenue loss or any kind of loss, maybe reputation loss, customer loss, data loss, or whatnot. Critical, posing an existential threat to the organization. For example, if your organization is under attack, then any kind of vulnerability could boost or shift to critical because you are under attack. Okay, risk ownership. The last step to performing a risk assessment is to decide what to do with the risks that were found. We can start by performing some calculation on the risk itself. The simplest calculation takes the likelihood of the risk and multiplies it with the impact of the risk to get a score. Some risk registers make use of more advanced rating systems such as DREAD. So this is a system used by Microsoft to assess risk to computer security threats. Okay. Assessing scores to the risks helps organizations prioritize which risk should be remediated first. While you may think the simplest answer is to secure the system so there is no risk, in real life it isn't that simple. Implementing more security controls will cost more money, and it does not help if we spend more money on the security than what we risk losing if we leave open the risk. So for example, if a particular risk will cost you $60,000 to mitigate for 1 year, and if the risk basically materializes, you will only lose $10,000 of the merchandise. Okay, so in this case it is not feasible to basically secure or mitigate the risk because there is no value basically in order to secure or mitigate that risk, because there is a big difference between 60,000 and 10,000. That means you will be losing 50,000 per year of the money. So it is not worth to basically mitigate that particular risk. Okay, so depending on the finance and the money, we can either mitigate the risk or leave it open or minimize it or transfer it to somebody else. Okay, in last step we decide who owns the risk that were identified. These team members are then responsible for performing an additional investigation into what the cost would be to close the risk versus what we would lose if the risk is realized. In cases where the cost of security is lower, we can mitigate the risk with more security controls. However, where it is higher, we can accept the risk. Accepted risk should always be documented and reviewed periodically to ensure that the cost has not changed. Okay. Internal and third-party risk assessments. Risk assessments are not just done internally in an organization, but can also be used to assess the risk that a third party may hold to an organization. Today, it is very common to make use of third parties to outsource key functions of your business. Transfer the risk basically. For example, a small organization may outsource its financial division to a large auditing firm, or a large organization may outsource the development of some of its application to a software engineering firm. However, this changes the risk as a compromise of the third party, where we may not have full control over their security, could still result in compromise of our data or sensitive assets. As such, we need to consider the risk the third party poses to us. Okay. Why do companies do internal risk assessment? The internal risk assessment help companies understand the risk they have within their own walls. It's like taking a good look around your house to check if there are any leaks or broken windows from within the house. Okay. For example, if the company finds that its software is outdated, it can prioritize updating it to prevent potential attacks. Internal risk assessment helps identify weak spots in the security, direct resources to the most important areas, stay compliant with security rules and regulations. Why do companies do risk assessment of the third parties? The companies don't just assess it themselves, they also need to evaluate the risks that come from working with other companies like vendors, suppliers, or partners. This is called a third-party risk assessment. It's important because one weak link in the chain can affect anyone. Okay, so let's make it simple. MaxKitty and Glitch want to make sure that whichever e-discovery company they choose won't leak or lose sensitive data. So they will be reviewing if these companies have a good security measures to keep data safe, follow data protection rules, align with the security standards that MaxKD and Glitch have in place. By doing a third-party risk assessment, MaxKD and Glitch are reducing potential supply chain risks, making sure the investigation does not run into trouble because of a weak security link in the chain. In order to do this, MaxKD has to create a risk assessment that can be sent to the potential third parties. Based on the answers provided by the third parties, MaxKD can then make an informed decision on which third party would be the best. Procuring a partner. Let's put this knowledge to the test. Let's start the static side attached to this task by pressing the view side button. Sure. Okay, we will have to assess the risk level of the risk that each of the vendors pose. We sent a questionnaire to each potential third party and have received their answers. Using these answers, we will have to add new risks to the risk register, which will give an overall risk scores for each third party. Once done, we can choose the third party that has the lowest risk score. Sure. So here you will be assessing 3 vendors based on their responses to security questions. For each vendor, review the vendor's responses to each security question, identify potential risk based on their responses and add them to the risk register. For each risk, provide a clear description of the risk. Rate the impact 1 to 4, where 4 is highest. Rate the likelihood 1 to 4, where 4 is highest. The risk score is automatically calculated by multiplying impact by likelihood. The vendor risk score is the sum of all risk scores of that vendor. Your goal is to identify the vendor with the lowest risk. Sure. Okay, so this is vendor 1. Document identified security risk for copper. Okay. Add a new risk. Question 1, question 2, question 3. Okay, what is question 1? Data in transit and data at rest needs to be encrypted with EAEC encryption as a requirement for this project. What type of EAEC encryption does your company use for data in transit and data at rest? None of the data at rest and none for... Ooh, it's a big risk. Big risk. They are not encrypting the data even in transit. That means they are not using HTTP. Okay, so for me it is I think it is critical, and definitely it will happen. What kind of access controls do you have to ensure data is accessed only by authorized people? Data can be accessed by all the people. Oh, come on. And the global administrators. Wow. This is not acceptable. Critical. Anybody can access this data. Okay. Question 3. How long do you keep client data after the case is closed? Less than 1 week. This is again acceptable. At least 1 year of data should be there. Okay. So your assessment indicates significant higher risk than expected. Assessment could be improved. What? Okay. What about now? Assessment needs review. Your assessment indicates significant higher risk than expected. Assessment. Oh, what? They are trying to say. Okay, medium, possible. What about now? Okay. Let's go with, for example, high. It could occur. Critical. Impact and likelihood. Okay, let's go with the possible. Assessment could be improved. Your assessment indicates lower risk than expected. about now? Your assessment indicates low risk than expected. Assessment could be improved. Your assessment indicates lower risk than expected. What about now? Yeah, perfect assessment. Come on, man. This is second question. Let's go with this. Let's see. Oh, perfect assessment. Your assessment indicates significant higher risk than expected. Okay. Good assessment. Your indicates higher risk than expected. Okay, let's improve the here as well. Assessment read and review. What about now? No. What about now? Good assessment. What if we just go to unlikely? Ah, it's still good assessment. Okay. Complete assessment. All risk assessment must match the expected impact and likelihood values exactly before processing. Oh man. Okay, let's go with this. What if we do this? They're still saying good assessment. What if we go low and minor? Okay, what if we go here and possible? What about likelihood? We change. What about very likely? Okay. Good assessment. So high. What about low impact? I don't know which one to select. Oh, wait. Oh, it is perfect now. Oh my god. Now all of these are perfect, man. Okay. Come on. I don't know which particular values they want me to select. What about unlikely? We need to improve. Let's go with medium. Okay, let's go with high. They're still saying it is good. What about critical? Oh, perfect assessment. Okay, but critical, but likelihood is unlikely, man. All right, so this is red fox. Okay. Question 1, data in transit and data at rest needs to be encrypted. Okay, data in transit, and so there is low risk. Should be perfect, man. They are saying no. Okay. Now, what about? Come on. Okay. Significant impact level could be, okay, 3. Okay, I get it. Let's go with 3. Data can be accessed by all people on the relevant team and the global administrator. Looks good, I think. What if I just go with this? Okay, wait. What was the risk for question 2 here? We went with 4-3. So We went with 4 and let's go with 2. What about 3? 4, 3. Come on, man. All of these 1 week to 2 weeks. Impact is high. Not ideal. What about now? Okay, wait a minute. So last one was 4 and 1. So impact will be 4 and 1. What about now? 4 and 2. Yeah, 4. Perfect. Complete the assessment. Okay, we are at the 3. Now the data in transit and if data at rest. So impact is high. Possibility could be data at risk while in transit. At risk, they say it could be improved. Let's see. Perfect. Awesome. Data can be accessed by all people in. Oh, very big risk. What about now? Perfect. It was 4-4. Big risk. More than 1 month. This is high impact, but good. What about now? Okay, wait a minute. Let me check. It was 4 and 2 before. 4 and 2. Let's go with this now. What about here? What about now? Okay, I don't know why the likelihood is 5 here, because we have 1 month of data, right? Okay, so here we go. Final assessment. So we have 4, 4, and 3, which is basically 8 and 11. We have 8 and 11. All of them are the same. Okay. So less risk is red fox. So we'll go with the red fox. Here we go. Here is our flag. GRC stands for governance risk compliance. Awesome. If you enjoyed this task, feel free to check out the risk management room. We'll check it out later on. So we have completed this particular task. Thank you guys for joining me. It was nice, basically go through the risk assessment. Although risk assessment needs a little bit of improvement because we never know which risk is on which level, but we were able to figure it out at the end. So thank you guys for joining me on this journey. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. Help us grow the community. And if you have any kind of comments, please mention in the comment section down below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.